It wasn't dramatic, no slammed doors or tearful confessions. It started quietly, with a crumpled receipt I found jammed in the side pocket of Olivia's car door while looking for a lost parking stub. The Daily Grind, it read, time-stamped 2:15 p.m. the previous Tuesday. 2 lattes, one with oat milk. The location wasn't anywhere near her office downtown, nor on her usual route home. It was miles across town, in a neighborhood she had no reason to be in, especially not on a Tuesday afternoon when she was supposedly locked in budget meetings. Just a receipt. Easily explained, probably. Maybe she met a colleague there, ran an errand, but something about it felt off. Olivia hated oat milk, and she meticulously cleared out her car every weekend. Why was this still here, crammed into the door pocket a week later? It snagged on a thread of unease that had been weaving itself through my thoughts for months. Olivia and we were comfortable. 20 years married, kids mostly grown and carving out their own lives. We ran a small graphic design business together from a home office, a partnership that had once felt seamless, built on shared goals and late-night work sessions fueled by cheap coffee. Lately, though, the seams felt frayed. There was a distance, a subtle shift in her energy I couldn't quite name. She'd become more protective of her phone, angling the screen away when texts came in, sometimes taking calls in another room. She started having more client meetings out of the office, vague lunches or coffee appointments that stretched longer than they used to. When I'd ask who she met with, the answers were brief, sometimes evasive. Oh, just a potential lead, or an old contact exploring possibilities. Nothing concrete, nothing I could pin down, just enough to make me feel excluded. We didn't talk like we used to. The easy camaraderie, the shared jokes, the late-night debriefs about work and life, they had faded, replaced by discussions about bills, household chores, coordinating schedules. Intimacy had become rare, often met with excuses about tiredness or headaches. I told myself it was normal, the ebb and flow of a long marriage, the stress of running a business. But the receipt from the Daily Grind, that felt different. It was a tangible piece of data that didn't fit the narrative I'd been telling myself. That evening, I watched her across the dinner table. She looked tired, scrolling through her phone between bites, occasionally offering a distracted comment about her day. Did she go across town for coffee last Tuesday? Who was the second latte for? The question sat unspoken on my tongue. Asking felt like an accusation, like admitting a suspicion I wasn't ready to voice. What if there was a simple explanation? What if I was inventing trouble where none existed? But the unease wouldn't go away. I started paying closer attention, noticing things I'd previously dismissed. The way she sometimes hurried off the phone when I walked into the room. The new perfume she wore occasionally, one I hadn't bought her. The slightly too long hugs goodbye before she left for those client meetings. Each observation was small, insignificant on its own, but together, like tiny pebbles dropped into a pond, they created ripples, disturbing the calm surface I had desperately tried to maintain. A few days later, I was updating our shared business calendar and noticed an entry for that previous Tuesday afternoon. Meeting, J. Harding, Potential Project, City Center Library. 2:00 p.m., 3:30 p.m. City Center Library was downtown, nowhere near the Daily Grind across town. A quick search confirmed J. Harding was a real potential client we'd pitched weeks ago, but the library location seemed odd for a follow-up. Why meet there and not our office or theirs? And why wouldn't she have mentioned securing that meeting afterward? She usually shared good news about potential projects immediately. Another piece that didn't fit. I clicked through older calendar entries, more vague meetings, lunches scheduled during times she'd later claimed to be working from home, appointments logged with initials instead of full names. A pattern began to emerge, subtle but consistent. Discrepancies, small inconsistencies that painted a picture of time unaccounted for, time deliberately obscured. Was I losing my mind? Was the stress getting to me, making me paranoid? I wanted to believe that. I wanted to dismiss the receipt, the calendar entries, the distant behavior as products of my own insecurity. But my gut, the same instinct that had guided me through tricky business deals and design challenges for years, was screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. One evening, she came home later than usual. "Sorry," she said, breezing past me towards the stairs. "Got held up discussing the Miller proposal." She smelled faintly of that new perfume. "Miller proposal?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe of the kitchen. "I thought we sent that off last week. Did they have feedback already?" She hesitated, just for a second, halfway up the stairs. No. Just some internal brainstorming, trying to anticipate their questions." She continued up without looking back. Internal brainstorming? We always did that together, and Miller was my main contact. Why would she be brainstorming it alone after hours? The lie was clumsy, transparent, and she didn't even seem to care how obvious it was. That hurt almost more than the lie itself, the carelessness of it, the lack of effort to even make it convincing, as if my noticing or my feelings didn't matter enough to warrant a better deception. I stood there for a long time after she disappeared upstairs, the silence of the house pressing in. The comfortable life we had built felt suddenly thin, fragile, like a projection on a screen that could flicker out at any moment. The woman upstairs, my wife, my business partner, the person I knew better than anyone else in the world. I realized with a sickening lurch that I might not know her at all. The receipt wasn't just a receipt anymore. It was the starting point of a map leading somewhere I didn't want to go, but somewhere I knew, with dawning certainty, I had to follow. The need to know gnawed at me, overriding the desire to maintain the illusion of normalcy. I started doing things I never thought I would, checking the mileage on her car after she got home from those vague meetings, comparing it to the distances to where she claimed she'd been, looking at our shared phone bill online, noting calls to numbers I didn't recognize, often clustered around the times she was supposedly unavailable. I felt like a spy in my own life, disgusted with myself for the suspicion, yet unable to stop digging. Each small discovery felt like confirmation, tightening the knot in my stomach. One afternoon, she said she was heading out for a couple of hours to meet a supplier, a paper company representative near the industrial park south of the city. An hour later, needing a specific file from her laptop for an urgent client request, I realized she'd left it on her desk in the home office. Knowing her password, we'd always shared that information freely until recently. I logged in to retrieve the file. As her desktop loaded, an instant messaging app popped up, one I didn't recognize her using frequently. A new message notification glowed. From Alex G. Message. Still thinking about yesterday. Can't wait for next week. My blood ran cold. Alex G. Not the name of any supplier I knew. I clicked on the chat history, my hand trembling slightly. The conversation thread stretched back weeks, maybe longer. It started innocently enough. Industry talk, shared articles, mentions of mutual acquaintances. But the tone shifted, becoming more personal, flirtatious. Inside jokes I didn't understand. Compliments about her ideas, her laugh. Mentions of meeting for coffee, for lunch. References to escaping the routine and finding someone who gets it. Then I saw the messages from the previous Tuesday, the day of the receipt. Alex G. Great seeing you. That place was perfect. Olivia. You too. Always is. Alex G. Next Tuesday? Same time? Olivia. Wouldn't miss it. There it was, the second latte, the reason for the trip across town. Alex G. I scrolled further, heart pounding, feeling nauseous. There were mentions of the Miller proposal. Apparently, Alex G. worked tangentially with them, and Olivia had been discussing our client strategy with him. There were complaints about me, disguised but clear, feeling unseen, dealing with my work obsession, needing someone who pays attention. It felt like reading a script for the slow-motion destruction of my marriage, written by my wife and a man I didn't even know. The betrayal wasn't just physical or even emotional in the abstract sense. It was concrete. Shared business strategies, private jokes, complaints about our life together, plans for secret meetings. She had built a parallel relationship, feeding it with time, energy, and honesty stripped from ours. I found the file I needed, copied it to a USB drive, and logged out, closing the laptop gently. My hands were shaking. I walked out of the office and stood in the hallway, leaning my forehead against the cool wall. Breathing felt difficult. The supplier meeting, Alex G., the coffee shop, the lies. It all clicked together with horrifying clarity. This wasn't paranoia. This was real. Olivia was having an affair. Not just a flirtation, but something ongoing, planned, deceitful. The comfortable rhythm of our life wasn't just fading. It had been a facade she maintained while her real life, her real emotional investment, happened elsewhere, with someone else. The casual intimacy of their messages, the easy way she seemed to confide in him, the implicit criticism of me, it felt like a physical blow. Who was this Alex G.? How long had this been going on? How could she sit across from me at dinner, sleep beside me at night, run a business with me day after day while living this double life? The hurt was sharp, intense, but underneath it, something else began to harden, a cold, quiet anger. An anger at the deception, the disrespect, the sheer audacity of her betrayal, conducted right under my nose, woven into the fabric of our shared work and life. She came home about an hour later, humming softly, dropping her keys on the counter. "Supplier meeting went well," she announced cheerfully. "Got us a better rate on the cardstock." I turned from the window where I'd been staring blankly at the backyard. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her smile seemed practiced now, brittle. The cheerfulness felt like a performance. Did she think I was that blind, that stupid? "Good," I said, my voice flat, devoid of inflection. She paused, her smile faltering slightly at my tone. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I replied. I couldn't confront her then, not yet. The discovery was too raw, the implications too enormous. I needed time to process, to think, but the knowledge hung between us, unspoken, poisoning the air. She must have sensed the shift, the sudden chill, because she didn't press further. She just gave me a strained look and retreated upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen, the silence broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. The image of her chat window, the casual intimacy of those messages replayed in my mind. Still thinking about yesterday. Wouldn't miss it. The ordinary details of our life. The coffee maker, the half-empty fruit bowl, the kids' artwork taped to the fridge, suddenly felt alien, part of a set for a life that was no longer mine. My wife was living a secret life, and the knowledge had changed everything. The floor felt unsteady beneath my feet. I didn't know what came next, only that the comfortable quiet we'd lived in was a lie, and the silence now felt deafening. The next few days passed in a haze of forced normalcy. On the surface, nothing changed. We discussed client proofs, paid bills online, coordinated who would pick up groceries. But underneath, a chasm had opened. I watched Olivia constantly, analyzing every word, every gesture, searching for cracks in her performance. She, in turn, seemed wary, cautious around me, as if sensing the shift in the atmosphere, but not knowing its cause or extent. The easy familiarity we once shared was gone, replaced by a tense, polite distance. Sleep offered little escape. My mind raced, replaying snippets of the chat logs, imagining conversations between Olivia and Alex G., trying to piece together the timeline of their affair. How many lunches? How many coffee dates? How deep did it go? The not knowing was agonizing. Each time she left the house for one of her vague appointments, suspicion coiled tight in my gut. Where was she really going? Was she with him right now? I avoided looking directly at the instant messaging app icon on her laptop, even when working side by side in the office. The knowledge of what lay beneath that icon felt like a physical weight. Confrontation felt both necessary and impossible. What would it achieve? Would she lie more? Would she confess? Would she leave? Part of me wanted the truth out, no matter how ugly. Another part dreaded shattering the fragile peace, unleashing the inevitable storm. The following Tuesday approached like a deadline on a project I desperately wanted to avoid. Their standing coffee date. Same time, same place, across town. The knowledge sat there, a ticking clock in the back of my mind. All day Monday, I wrestled with myself. Should I go there? Should I try to catch them? The thought felt cheap, demeaning, yet the need for certainty, for irrefutable proof seen with my own eyes, was a powerful pull. Tuesday morning arrived. Olivia seemed slightly more on edge than usual, checking her phone frequently. Around lunchtime, she announced she had a quick meeting she needed to step out for. "Might grab a bite while I'm out," she added, avoiding my eyes. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice neutral, though my heart was pounding. "Don't rush back." She gave me a quick, almost furtive glance, then grabbed her purse and left. The moment the front door clicked shut, I felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with dread. I looked at the clock. 12:45 p.m., plenty of time to get across town before their 2:15 p.m. rendezvous. I shouldn't do it. It was beneath me. Confront her directly, like an adult. But the image of their casual messages planning this exact meeting propelled me out the door. I needed to see, I needed to know, finally and completely. The drive across town felt surreal. Traffic flowed, People went about their days, oblivious to the personal drama unfolding in my car. I felt detached, an observer in my own life story. I parked a block away from the daily grind, finding a spot with a clear view of the entrance. Then I waited. Waiting felt like torture. Doubts gnawed at me. What if she wasn't coming? What if Alex G. canceled? What if I was wrong about everything, just a jealous husband driven to paranoia? Minutes stretched into an eternity. I checked my watch constantly. 2:05 p.m. 2:10 p.m. Then I saw her. Olivia walked up to the coffee shop, checking her phone as she approached the door. She looked casually chic, wearing jeans and a stylish jacket, looking less like someone heading to a business meeting and more like someone meeting a friend, or more. She scanned the street briefly before pushing the door open and disappearing inside. My breath caught in my throat. She was here. Part 1 confirmed. Now for Part 2. Would Alex G. show? I scanned the approaching cars, the pedestrians on the sidewalk. My gaze kept darting back to the coffee shop window, trying to catch a glimpse of her inside. A few minutes later, a man approached the shop from the opposite direction. Tall, lean, dark hair, wearing a well-cut blazer over a casual shirt. He looked confident, checking his watch as he walked. He matched the vague impression I'd formed from the chat logs. Professional, put together. He paused outside the door, glanced inside, and a small smile touched his lips. Then he, too, went inside. Alex G. It had to be. I sat frozen in my car, gripping the steering wheel. They were in there together, right now, just feet away, having coffee, talking, laughing, maybe, sharing secrets, living their parallel life while mine sat parked on the curb, watching. The reality of it crashed over me. Seeing them arrive separately, knowing they were inside together, made it undeniably real in a way the chat logs hadn't. This wasn't just digital flirtation, it was planned, physical meetings, an affair. What now? Storm in there? Confront them both? Make a scene? The thought was tempting, fueled by a surge of raw anger and hurt. But what good would it do? Humiliate myself? Give them the satisfaction of a public drama? No. I sank back against the driver's seat, the adrenaline draining away, leaving me feeling hollowed out, exhausted. Seeing them wasn't the confirmation I needed. I already knew. Seeing them just made the betrayal feel sharper, more visceral. It solidified the reality I could no longer deny. I watched the door of the daily grind for another minute, imagining them sitting at a small table, leaning towards each other, oblivious to the wreckage they were creating just outside. Olivia's face, animated, engaged, perhaps complaining about me. Alex G's face, attentive, understanding. The image was unbearable. Slowly, deliberately, I put the car in gear. I didn't look back as I pulled away from the curb. Driving away felt like a retreat, but also like the only sane option. There was nothing to be gained by confronting them there, ambushing them mid-latte. The confrontation would come inevitably, but it would be on my terms, in our space, not theirs. The drive home was heavy with a grim sense of finality. The questions about if were gone, replaced by the stark reality of what now. The life I had walked out of that morning felt irrevocably changed. The Olivia I might find when I got back wasn't the woman I thought I knew. She was a stranger, living under my roof, sharing my bed, running my business, a stranger who preferred coffee across town with another man. Pulling into our driveway felt like arriving in a foreign country. The familiar house looked different, tainted. I walked inside, the silence amplifying the turmoil in my head. I went straight to the home office, sat down at my desk, and stared blankly at the computer screen. Work felt impossible. Everything felt impossible. The comfortable life wasn't just cracked, it was shattered. And I was left standing in the ruins, wondering how, or even if, it could ever be rebuilt. The betrayal felt absolute, cutting deeper than I could have imagined. She hadn't just cheated on me, she had cheated on our entire life together. The shared history, the business we built, the family we raised, it was all collateral damage in her secret pursuit of what? Happiness? Escape? Something she clearly couldn't find with me. The coffee receipt still lay on my desk where I'd left it days ago. I picked it up, crumpling it slowly in my fist. Proof. Evidence. Garbage. It represented the moment the facade began to crumble. Now, it felt like the whole structure had collapsed. There was nothing left but dust and debris, and the silence. The awful echoing silence of knowing the truth. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk, burying my face in my hands. The faint scent of Olivia's perfume lingered in the room. It smelled. The afternoon stretched into evening, each hour marked by the relentless ticking of the hall clock. I didn't move from the office chair. Work files remained unopened, emails unanswered. The business we had built together, the one requiring my attention right now, felt like a cruel joke. How could I focus on design proofs and client relations when the co-owner, my wife, was actively dismantling our life during coffee breaks? The sound of her car pulling into the driveway again sent a jolt through me. Different this time. Not the nervous anticipation of waiting for proof, but the grim certainty of impending conflict. I heard the front door open and close, her footsteps lighter now, perhaps relieved her secret rendezvous had gone undiscovered. "Mark?" she called out, her voice carrying a note of forced brightness as she entered the kitchen. "You still working?" I pushed back from the desk and walked slowly towards the office doorway, leaning against the frame. She was putting her purse down on the counter, her back to me. "No," I said. My voice sounded hollow in the quiet house. She turned, sensing the change in my tone immediately. The forced smile faltered. She saw my face, the stillness in my posture. The caution I'd seen in her eyes over the past few days sharpened into alarm. "What is it? What's wrong?" "How was your meeting?" I asked, keeping my voice deliberately flat, devoid of accusation, just a cold inquiry. "It was fine," she said quickly, looking away, busying herself by opening the refrigerator. "Productive?" "Good," I paused, letting the silence stretch. Was the coffee good at the daily grind? Her hand froze on the refrigerator door handle. Slowly, she turned back to face me, her eyes wide, the color draining from her face. She didn't speak, didn't move. The air thickened, charged with the static of finally spoken truth. "I saw you," I continued, my voice still quiet, but gaining a hard edge. "Across town. Today. You and Alex G." Her facade didn't just crack. It disintegrated. Her mouth opened slightly, a tiny gasp escaping. She looked down at her hands, then back up at me, her expression a mixture of terror and disbelief. "Mark, Don't!" I cut her off, taking a step into the kitchen. The forced calm I'd maintained began to fray. Don't insult me with another lie, Olivia. Not now. I gestured vaguely around the kitchen, encompassing the house, the office, our shared life. How long? Tears welled in her eyes, the predictable response, but it didn't soften me. Mark, it's not what you think. Isn't it? I asked, the bitterness rising. Isn't it you meeting another man behind my back, lying about where you are, who you're with, sharing details about our business, complaining about our life, planning God knows what else? I saw the flicker of recognition in her eyes as I mentioned the business details, the complaints. She knew I knew more than just the coffee dates. We can talk about this, she pleaded, taking a tentative step towards me, hands outstretched slightly. Please, just let me explain. Explain what? I shook my head, feeling a profound weariness settle over the anger. Explain how the woman I've spent 20 years with, built a life and a business with, could look me in the eye day after day while carrying on a secret life. Explain how our partnership became so meaningless to you that you'd risk everything for what, Olivia? What was so broken here that this seemed like the answer? She stood there, tears streaming down her face now, unable to form words. Her silence was its own answer, confirming the depth of the chasm between us. It wasn't just about Alex G. or the coffee or the lies. It was about the fundamental breakdown of trust, the realization that the person I thought I knew best had become a stranger, making choices that rendered our shared past irrelevant. I looked at her, at the tears, at the crumbling defense, and felt nothing, just a vast cold emptiness. The hurt was immense, but the anger had burned itself out, leaving behind only the ash of resignation. The questions of how and why suddenly seemed less important than the undeniable fact of what now? Could we survive this? Did I even want to? I stared at her, the woman who was my wife, my partner, now reduced to a weeping stranger in our kitchen. The silence stretched, filled only by her quiet sobs. The comfortable life we'd built together lay in ruins around us, shattered by secrets and oat milk lattes. And in that moment, standing amidst the wreckage, the only question left in my mind was impossibly simple, yet utterly complex. Where do we even begin to pick up the pieces? Or do we just walk away from the rubble? The sheer weight of that choice felt crushing,